What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode here, the Side Guys Football Forum. I'm Enrico, host of the side, joined as always by my good friend. Fortunately, not today either. Still dealing with some back issues, a little bit of flare-up that he had over the weekend, and so I'll be doing the next couple of episodes on my own here, just to make sure that he is 100% good to go. So hopefully once we get to the fantasy football season, he is ready, he is good to go. He'll give you all of his analysis as we get into the season here, but yeah, just want to make sure that he's doing all right. So yeah, want to make sure that we can get these episodes out to you as we approach Labor Day weekend. A lot of drafts are happening at this time. Want to make sure that we're getting you all the content that we can, especially when it comes to our position rankings. So we recently dropped our quarterback episode. Hopefully you were able to tune into that episode. If not, just make sure you jump back, listen to that episode. We gave our some sleepers, we gave some busts, and we gave bold prediction at the position, both me and Tad. So you'll get that, but obviously you won't get Tad's side of the coin here as far as his sleeper, bust, and bold prediction at the position, but you will get mine. So I want to get you that for the running back position. That is the topic of today's episode, talking about fantasy running backs. And I mean, talked about this before the podcast, we're sort of shifting into more of a pass first league. So we're seeing, the running back position sort of get devalued a little bit. Normally when you go to the first round of a redraft fantasy football league, your standard fantasy football league, running backs used to litter the first round. You see like 7 out of the first 10 running picks in that first round, or 8 of the first 12 would all be running backs. But now you're sort of seeing the flip where it's like the opposite is happening. Now it's wide receivers or sort of filling that first round, with half of them, if not more, filling the first round, and running backs are sliding. So you get some premier running backs sliding into the second round now. So that actually benefits you. So, check out this episode, obviously, so you can sort of get an idea as far as a sleeper, a bust, and a bold prediction at the position, to help you sort of plan your strategies. Because yeah, as some of these running backs are sort of sliding deeper into the draft, you sort of address your draft strategy accordingly and really build out a solid roster with some of the news and points that I'm about to give you here. So as mentioned, going to give you a sleeper, a bust, and a bold prediction at the position. So we're going to start with the bust position here first. Nick Chubb with the Houston Texans. And so we're hearing the news of Joe Mixon is going to miss the first 4 weeks of the season, but being put on the IR list there in Houston, dealing with a foot injury. And so he's going to miss at least the first 4 games, if not more than that. He never played in the preseason. He hasn't been practicing with the team while he's been dealing with this injury. You have to remember that in the offseason, Houston signed Nick Chubb after Cleveland did not want to re-sign him. And so this is sort of a situation where he sort of has the door open for him. And, this foot injury can nag Mixon all season long, limit his effectiveness. And so I think that sort of signals a sort of chance for Chubb to sort of regain his prominence as a premier fantasy running back in fantasy circles and a good running back in the league overall. You look at last year, Mixon finished as the RB17 in PPR leagues. He also missed some time last season dealing with an ankle injury early in 2024. The problem here, though, just jumping back to Chubb, problem here is that Nick Chubb has dealt with serious injuries in the past couple of years as well. So he missed all of the 2023 season with a torn MCL, damaged ACL they suffered. Then you have to remember that was a tackle that happened in that Steelers game that tackled him right into his knee and just unfortunately missed all of that season in 2023. Then he suffered a broken foot in week 15 of the 2024 season. So he was able to sort of mend himself. I think he came back in week 6 or 7 of last season. But yeah, was not his usual self. He injured his foot at the week 15 in 2024, as I mentioned. And then he definitely suffered a concussion during training camp as last year as well, wearing a non-contact injury the past week here with the Houston Texans. And so you look at Chubb, and I mean, when he's healthy, he's one of the best fantasy backs in the league, but Chubb is also getting closer to 30. and he suffered major injuries in the past couple seasons. So I mean, this just doesn't signal to me that with Mixon being out, can I fully rely on Nick Chubb? Now, reports that we're hearing out of Houston is that it's right now Nick Chubb and former standout for that backfield, Dameon Pierce. They're going to be splitting the carries there. But I think there's another running back that may insert himself into the conversation sooner rather than later, and that is Woody Marks, a running back that they added in the last draft, excuse me, the running back out of USC. Our LAFB fans are definitely a lot of huge fan of that. He brings versatile skills as a rusher and a pass catcher, and I think he could leapfrog both Dameon Pierce as well as Nick Chubb on the depth chart. As mentioned, it may not happen instantly. I think they want to give the early work to Nick Chubb, especially to see whether he still has that juice left in him. They obviously have Dameon Pierce, who formerly was a very good running back in the system, but just found his way out of favor with them signing Joe Mixon. Just didn't look the same year after year from his rookie year. So yeah, I think there's a good chance that, based on all the tape that I saw for Woody Marks, I think, he's got a guy that, can really be a versatile player in this offense, really just line up wherever he needs to, can be an effective ball carrier, can get you some good yards when you need it. And just overall, I think he brings a skill set. He's young, obviously. That's definitely a good sign for him, too. So I think he's got a good shot that, maybe honestly, by the time Joe Mixon's back in the lineup and he's healthy and good to go, Woody Marks may be more comfortable in this offense that he might start to challenge all of these running backs on the depth chart. I think once Mixon returns, he's going to get the precedence there, obviously being their lead back. But just, yeah, the injuries just continue to nag Mixon all season long, and he just can't be his effective self. I could see a situation where it's like Chubb, Dameon Pierce, and Woody Marks are leading the backfield for the Texans. But of those three, Marks just signals to me that he could sort of overtake Nick Chubb at the midpoint of the season and really become a find in this Houston backfield, a guy to sort of keep on your radar there. Just jumping back to Chubb, I mean, just overall, just this Houston's offensive line just seemed to take a step back as well. Traded Laramie Tunsil to the Washington Commanders. I know they drafted Ariante Ursary in the second round, but the rest of awesome offensive line just didn't see much of improvement in my eyes compared to last season. Houston had the 11th fewest total yards in the NFL, and while Mixon had a good season, it wasn't a great season. And so I think there's just a lot of hesitation there. When you look at running back depth charts and you see that the main guy is not going to be playing for any significant amount of time, there's a chance that you draft the backup, or it's like you have that backup guy on your bench there, sort of a handcuff option in case, like, if the starter were to go down, this handcuff could come in and be a very immediate guy that can sort of add to your roster and just give you a lot of points very quickly and also make that seamless transition there. So it's like, I just don't see that here with Nick Chubb. I think we're going to see like maybe some flashes and people are going to be like, oh, this is the Nick Chubb that we saw back in Cleveland. He could be the guy that can dominate the backfield and be a lead scorer on my fantasy roster. I just don't think those games are going to come too often where it's worth drafting this guy to rely on as a flex option, as a RB2, whatever it is. It's just like, I just don't see it. As a bench guy, I can sort of understand that. We want to see maybe the juice is back and he's just going to be completely fine. He's going to be his old self and there's going to be no, changes as far as like his running ability and his playing ability in Houston. But signs to me just point towards that, like he's partly on decline. There's a reason that I think Cleveland decided not to resign him to. He's a long time favorite there in Cleveland with the Browns. I know Browns fans loved him. So, yeah, I think there's something to say there when the Browns didn't want to resign him as well. So, yeah, I just don't see this situation sort of warranting drafting Chubb to sort of be a staple of your fantasy roster, unless, like I said, he's a bench option. Then I can sort of understand that one more. But being the starting on the roster for you, I just don't see it. So, Woody Marks is a guy that I would keep my eye on. Dameon Pierce intrigues me a little bit, but Nick Chubb, unfortunately, I am avoiding that in fantasy drafts, though. Shifting though to a guy that I think could be a very sneaky addition. I was sort of talking about Woody Marks here. Talking about a fellow rookie here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm talking about Kaleb Johnson, rookie running back that led the Big Ten in rushing yards and lands in Arthur Smith's led offense. This is just a match made in heaven. Like, I mean, we know that Arthur Smith likes to emphasize running the football. He's got a stable of tight ends to sort of add to the offensive line to really, mix up coverages, but also really just emphasize that they can run the ball in any look that they want with whichever players are out there. You look at Najee Harris, he has gone for this offense. He's now the Chargers backfield in Los Angeles. And while Jaylen Warren's still on the roster, he is the more experienced running back in this system. He just doesn't have the same level of skills that Johnson can bring to the table. In 3 seasons in the NFL, Warren has never topped 150 rushing attempts and has only gone over 200 touches just once, and that was 2 seasons ago in 2023. Looking at the last 3 seasons with Harris and Warren in the same backfield, Harris never saw less than 250 rushing attempts. Talk since drafting Johnson and through training camp as well is that Johnson is the running back to take the early down rushing for the Steelers. I do know they have Kenneth Gainwell on the offense as well. They have Jaylen Warren, as mentioned. And all through training camp, it seems like they're leading the depth chart as far as being ahead of Kaleb Johnson. But I think you don't draft Kaleb Johnson to your roster in a run-first offense unless you expect this guy to sort of take a lead in his rookie season. So yeah, maybe it's not going to be right out the gate, but I can see a situation where Kaleb Johnson is eventually going to take those first 2 down rushing roles. I will agree that he is not a pass catcher. He is purely a runner, but his pass catching skills are developing. I think he could become a more 3 down type of running back in the NFL. But when you have a guy like Jaylen Warren, I don't think you need to develop that skill as quickly with Kaleb Johnson on the roster still. So I think you look at Jaylen Warren, I think he's going to take the pass catching work out of the backfield for the Steelers. But Kaleb Johnson, I think, is easily going to overtake being the lead actual pure runner in this backfield compared to a Kenneth Gainwell or anybody else on this roster. And so, all that aside, though, Johnson, I think, just brings a more explosive running attack compared to what they have with Najee Harris in the last couple seasons. If you go back to their college work, I mean, Johnson averaged 6.4 rushing yards per attempt back at Iowa, which was higher than Harris's final seasons at Alabama. His last 2 seasons, he averaged 5.9 his junior year and 5.8 his senior year. And so as you look at, which stable of Alabama running backs that have come into the NFL and found success, like your Mark Ingrams, like your Jahmyr Gibbs, like your Derrick Henrys. They've all been so dominant in the NFL. Najee Harris, we thought we saw that early on in his rookie year and, the following years as well. But now he found himself in a new place in Los Angeles with the Chargers, landing in a Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman offense, being able to run the ball there. I think that makes a lot of sense. But they also drafted Murray in Hampton. So it's like, I don't know how effective he's going to be there. But you look at Kaleb Johnson, I think they wanted to get a guy who could just get a lot of yards, as mentioned, 6.4 rushing yards per attempt. This guy can find the hole and he can hit it hard and get a lot of yards for you. He doesn't have that breakaway speed, but I mean, this is just a guy that just you methodically give him the ball. He's not going to tire. He's going to make the defense tired. And then when you need to sort of close out games, especially with this offense sort of looking a little bit different, they got, and very old Aaron Rodgers. They got a revamped pass catching duo there with DK Metcalf, Roman Wilson, former draft pick. They got a stable of tight ends, as mentioned, with Darnell Washington, Pat Fryermuth. They traded for Jonathan Smith. So, I mean, they got a lot of pieces there, but just I don't know how dependable that passing offense is going to be. I think they'll lean more on the run. So, yeah, even if Kenneth Gainwell gets touches, and obviously Jaylen Warren leads the, running back situation to start with, I think Kaleb Johnson just has enough skills and the right skills to sort of fit in this offense, fit in it quickly, and really become a dominant piece of this rushing attack and the overall Steelers offense, definitely by the midpoint of the season, if not sooner. I think this guy just has that talent. And the way that the offense is looking at Pittsburgh, they need as much, young, youthful, experienced, solid talent as soon as they can. And I think Johnson is definitely going to earn himself a lot of starting time, a lot of touches in this offense very quickly, and eventually could become the starter in this offense as well. So Kaleb Johnson, a guy maybe is sort of not being talked about a lot because, he's landed in a situation where it's like we still got some question marks about how that offense is going to look. But I think he's got the skill set to really emerge and become a very key piece of a fantasy roster if you decide to draft him to your bench for sure. I don't think I want to see this guy as a starter just yet. I think give it a couple weeks. But yeah, if you draft him to your bench, he's a guy that I can definitely see inserted into my starting roster sooner rather than later off of my bench there. So that's my bust. That's my sleeper there. I'm going to close this episode out by giving you my running back bold prediction, my running back hot take, whatever you sort of want to label it here. Um, this is a running back that I had high hopes for. I really like this guy coming out of college. Unfortunately, the situation that he landed in didn't help his projections as far as like where his career is going to go. But I think this year he can definitely break out in his second year. My hot take is that Trey Benson finishes as a top 20 running back. Now, there's a hidden bold prediction within this one in that I think Benson is going to overtake James Conner on the depth chart. So, I mean, you look at last season, as mentioned, as a rookie, unfortunately did not get a lot of work. He only totaled 63 carries for 291 yards and he scored one touchdown. In fairness, Connor had one of his best seasons in the NFL last season as he finished with a career high 1,094 rushing yards, played in all but one game last season. So 16 out of the 17 games, Connor played in them. Coming out of Florida State, Benson had an advantage of being one of the few running backs without that much wear and tear on his body. He transferred from Oregon, where he wasn't seeing a lot of playing time. He landed in offense at Florida State that featured quarterback Jordan Travis. So once again, just not being used a ton there. Jordan Travis being a running quarterback. This led to Benson finishing his career with only 316 carries total over the course of 3 college seasons between Oregon and Florida State. So with the usage being low, he's only 22 when the season begins. He's the feature of the Cardinals rushing attack. I think there's no question there. So James Conner, the guy has found, the fountain of youth or whatever it was in Arizona. Pittsburgh sort of wrote him off. He's been finding a lot of success in Arizona, and I don't think he's going to, necessarily take that much of a dip this year as well. But I think, with Conner, I talked about this with Nick Chubb sort of entering that year 30. Connor's been pretty much healthy a lot of his career. I mean, he's had suffered some injuries in the past. But I think, when he entered that dreaded age as a running back, specifically as being that age 30, I think he was able to sort of dodge a lot of bullets last year. Definitely he was Neo in the Matrix, that scene, where he's just like able to dodge a lot and able to come out completely healthy for a full 17 game season, with the exception of one game last season. You're able to post career numbers, and I think that's, very beneficial when you're able to play every game. I think this year, unfortunately, I think there may be some chances where, unfortunately, his body may just won't be able to hold up for him. He may have to miss some time, and I think that will allow Benson to sort of creep in and take over that lead running back role from James Conner. I also just think that the youth and the skill set that Benson brings to the table is just a little bit ahead of Conner, especially, like I said, where they are in their careers. So, I definitely see a situation where Benson will, is sort of going under the radar in fantasy drafts because people are just eyeing Conner and just seeing what he did last year and just being like, this guy is going to be amazing in his second year. Like, I mean, he's going to be able to back that up. It's like we're going to be able to see this consistent production from James Conner year over year. But I think, you look at this year, you look at that the hope is that Benson can sort of emerge with him. There's a lot of talk during preseason training camp by head coach Jonathan Gannon saying that, we see Benson and Conner being a 1A, 1B situation where it's like they're going to split time. They're going to be able to work in conjunction with each other to lead this Cardinals rushing attack. I also think, they want to see more Benson. I think that is another reason as to why they're saying this too, because, they know that Conner is not the future of this backfield. There's a reason that they drafted Benson. There's a reason that I think they labeled him as the 1B to James Conner's 1A. I think they want to see if this is a guy that we could trust in our backfield to lead our rushing attack for future seasons, whether he'll eventually earn that contract to sort of re-sign with the team and really become, the staple of this offense, for a long time to come. Like I said, Connor's still going to be involved in this offense, but I just don't think there's a chance that he plays in every game this season. I see him liking him maybe to maybe 11 to 13 games. I think he should miss some time, unfortunately, this season. But just on paper, the Cardinals also have one of the favorable schedules when it comes to running the ball, and this just speaks volume for a Benson breakout in 2025. currently going as the 48th drafted running back in PPR leagues and has an ADP of 153. So that means he's being drafted right around the tail end of your standard redraft leagues, whether that's in 10-person league or a 12-person league. Especially in a 12-person league, there's a chance he gets drafted, but in 10-person league, there's a good chance that he may not get drafted at all. I definitely have some friends that have shared some screenshots with me as far as like, how did my draft do? And they're in 10-person leagues. And I asked them, what's the running back situation for them? What's the free agency situation for them at each position? And consistently, I'm seeing Trey Benson being undrafted as far as being available on the waiver wire. And I think this is a guy, maybe in a 10-person league, you don't need to draft Trey Benson, but he's a guy that you want to keep your eye on in a 10-person league. But in a 12-person league, Benson is one of those guys that he's the last guy that's filling out my bench. He's definitely someone that I eye to have a big breakout, and that's something that I want to take advantage of in the draft because I'd rather have the opportunity to have him and then drop him in case it doesn't work out instead of wanting him because the breakout is starting to happen, and now I'm dealing with everybody else in my league to claim him off the waiver wire. So yeah, this is a situation where it's like you want to be ahead of the curve instead of behind it because, yeah, if you have him and he starts to break out, that just benefits your roster as far as like, being able to trade him if you already have solid running backs, trade some of your other running backs to fill out the better other parts of your roster. Whatever it is, it's just like I'd rather, like I said, have that control over Trey Benson instead of wanting him. And now I'm competing with everybody else in my league to claim him off the waiver wire. But I mean, the guy, just like I said, has the skill set to really be a dominant back because he's running in the NFL. And I think with James Conner's situation being in that age 30, I don't, like I said, I really don't expect lightning to strike twice and for him to play in all 17 games or even 16 games like he did last season. I really just don't expect that to happen this year. I expect to see a little bit of regression there. I just don't see the numbers to sort of back up him having a successful season year over year. I like Trey Benson to really just emerge and overtake that backfield. And like I said, finish as a top 20 running back. Now, you may look at that and be like, it's not the boldest take, but I also, like I said, because of that early season sort of struggle where it's like he'll share time with Connor, maybe the touches will still favor more Connor compared to Benson. But I think, like I said, by the midway point of the season, if not sooner, the Cardinals coaching staff is going to recognize that Benson is clearly the better running back. It gives them more of a chance to win ball games compared to James Conner. And I think it's really going to see that reversal where the favor of the touches will go towards Benson as opposed to Conner. And like I said, I just don't see Conner finishing out the entire season playing all 17 games or even close to that with 16 as well. So Trey Benson, a guy that I want to stash on my bench for sure as a guy that can break out for me eventually. But yeah, that will close out today's episode. Quick one here without Tad. But yeah, guys, I mean, this is just the second episode that we got with our position rankings. We'll get you a wide receiver as well as a tight ends episode later in the week here. But yeah, make sure you tune back to our quarterback episodes. They're always up to date with all of our information dropped for you. Make sure you're following us on Twitter because you got me at Side23. You got Side94, got show handle at the Side Guys, and of course on Instagram at the Side Guys as well. If you've been following us on our social media handles, we've been dropping all of our position rankings on there already. We'll have all those graphics up by the end of the week, if not way sooner than that. So that is a good way to sort of combine the rankings where my rankings are based off of pre-draft rankings. So this is how you should sort of view players before you draft, as you're drafting. And then Tad's are based on where he thinks these players are going to finish. And so it's like, if you use both in conjunction, I think you can build a really solid strategy to address your fantasy roster and how you want to manage the rest of the season as far as trades and just managing the waiver wire, things along those lines. And so, yeah, use both in conjunction. You can really define yourself to have a solid fantasy season and become a champion in your respective leagues. Make sure you subscribe or listen to your podcast. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so we're always up to date with our videos as well. And please, guys, the biggest thing, make sure you're supporting our parent network at LAFB Network because without them, there would be no us. They're giving you a lot of great content as far as, the Rams and the Chargers. Next weekend is the NFL season, so they're ramping you up. Today, as of recording, is officially cut day, so they're dropping a lot of players out in the waiver wire to see, who was waived, who was released, who was traded. Can any of these guys help the Rams or the Chargers? They're looking at the Rams and Chargers, who they cut as far as why did they decide to move on from these players to cut down to the main roster. They got all that coverage there, and of course, coverage with all their week one opponents as well. But guys, Next week is the NFL season, but this weekend, unofficially this past weekend, the college football season is up and running. And so this coming weekend, we got the main slate. Pretty much every school will be playing. So yeah, guys, they got you covered with with Rams and Chargers for the professional level. They got you covered with Bruins and Trojans football on the college football level. So lots of great content as far as LA football is concerned. All four LA football teams. But it's not just football anymore. They got you covered when it comes to the NBA. So, with the season starting up in about a month and a half or so, they got you covered with Clippers and Lakers coverage. And of course, we're on the final stretch of the regular season with the MLB season. And of course, the postseason right around the corner in October. They got you covered with Angels and Dodgers coverage as far as how those teams are shaping out and what's to look for as far as the postseason or the offseason for the Angels in particular there. But guys, lots of great content from a lot of great content producers over there. Make sure you're supporting each and every one of them, including good friend of the podcast, Thaddeus Klein and Chauncey Talese of LA Podfidential. Give you a lot of great content when it comes to LA sports, LA pop culture news in general. I mean, just anything and everything when it comes to just, having fun on the podcast. I mean, they're just a great source to sort of just like, kick back and listen to some fun guys talking about some good stuff there. So appreciate everybody tuning in. As mentioned, we got a wide receiver and tight end episode on tap here for you guys. But to everybody who's already supporting us by listening to the podcast, by watching our videos, by interacting with us on social media, dropping YouTube comments. I mean, just anything and everything that you're doing to support the podcast, we really cannot thank you enough.